This is going to be a very short launch on my part. All I want to say is that we have a list of, not an open mic in one sense, but an open mic of people who are here especially to talk about Terry. We're going to roast her probably. Not really. But I also, I bring greetings from afar from South America. Russell Smith sends his greetings. Russell nearly let it all out of the bag when he contacted you. That's why he emailed you. But I also have some poems here, just very few, from Rich Snell, who was going to come, but has been invited by the King and Queen of Bhutan to spend May in Bhutan. So these poems come from Bhutan this morning in an email. Two things that I will mention. The Ambient Cafe is where the haiku poets of Bhutan gather, so when you hear it, that's what it's all about. And also, when I mentioned Lighting the Global Lantern, of course, that's the book that you wrote. So these 3 poems from him. Flying into the future, eastbound through Asia, we lose a day. Snow-capped Himalayas of spring, feeling Terry Ann's presence. Late spring day at Thimphu's Ambient Cafe, lighting global lanterns. Along with that, we have some people who would like to say something one way or another. And this is the list of people. Sheila Ross is not able to be here because she's not feeling well. But if the poets on the list, we have lyric poets and haiku poets and all kinds of people this is basically a goodbye to Terry in a literary sense. And so these are poet friends of yours from all walks of poetry land. And so we'll just have them there in order, and people can just come up when your name comes up. There you go.
When she sent me an email saying she was leaving, I sent an email back saying, oh, no. Terry's works with the Tabitha Foundation, helping people in Cambodia get over the Pol Pot disaster and the killing fields. There's, in the beginnings of opening poems in particular of Day Moon Rising, there are references to some horrors. And in keeping with those horrors, I have a poem. It's called The Peacekeeper. My friend needs to tell me difficult things. He needs to sleep sometimes. Sometimes so do I. This time it was a hand grenade. Its flight, its mission to join sharp fragments with flesh. Like all of its kind, it soared the first half of its arc. At the top, its vertical velocity was 0. Hanging from his knees in the tree, the boy, strange fruit, might have seen it pause on its path to his banyan bower. For a moment it came from nowhere. For a moment it went nowhere. If I could freeze it there, the boy upside down, the grenade, yellow as a pineapple hanging in the sky. For a moment, my friend could leave it there with me. For a moment, not have seared into his dreams, asleep and waking. The flash, the blast, the dust, the ragged leaves, the graceless fall. For a moment, my friend could sleep as soundly as the boy. Thank you. Elena?
Well, she wants to, so we'll have Monty go up instead. Monty's going up.
Oh, Monty's going up? Okay, good.
Monty, you're Sheila.
I am, or Alina, one or the other. I'm sad that Terry's leaving, but I'm very pleased to be able to read a poem for her As some of you know, she inadvertently helped me out of a real bind with a manuscript I had a number of years ago. I heard her read a very sexy haiku at an old bar called the Bayou, I think. And it led me to rewrite an entire book as haiku. And failed haiku, I must say, because I had to rewrite it as something else afterwards. But it got me writing that manuscript again, and I've always appreciated that. I want to read one poem. It's a poem about hunting for a house on the West Coast, which I think Terry Ann and Daryl are experiencing right now. It's a bit of a challenge. Comes from not the book that Terry Ann had an influence on, but a book that Chaudière published a number of years ago now. It doesn't seem that long, but it's been a few. The book is Disappointment Island. This comes from the title sequence, and it's called Real Property. It actually begins with a quote from Rilke, who talks about a house, and for me it was like Rilke giving advice to real estate agents everywhere. Whoever has no house now will never have one, said Rilke, in his attack upon real estate agents everywhere. Not even one like this small cabin, with its inaccessible waterfront and obstructed views of the mountains. No. Not even that one. But remember how Retke loved the slug for his stripes of silver and the small house on his back, and Mary Oliver the hermit crab for its roof of old calcium, which is the only available argument against the sea. No, not even that. And I heard that Phyllis on the next island over had to move to establish the necessary distance between houses, after some realtor told her that the sounds of lovemaking lowers property values. Was she a client of mine? I knew a doctor who danced alone in a north room. I knew another whose house was burning even when she first entered it. And yes, you sold it to her that way. Well, insurance will cover it. A Swedish tourist called this place a construction site. Nothing is finished. We make our mistakes and try over, and all of the places we have inhabited, all the anger and grief and desire can be lived again. Well, we'll send you a calendar. All I have is a small down payment. So show me something modest and second-hand, with an empty room and a window that knows how much I am still living in the rest of the world. Thank you.
Excuse me while I interrupt for a moment of crass materialism. To keep the show on the road, we pass the hat around regularly. If you could find it in your hearts to make a small donation to Tree and keep us on the rails, we'd appreciate it. I'm sorry, Peter.
So Claudia suggested that we could read a poem by Terry. So this is from A Crazy Man Thinks He's Ernest in Paris. Courtyard, Fenway. I think of my mother as a young woman dressed in her two-piece suit and two-toned pumps, walking through the stone arches of her beloved palazzo at the Isabella Gardner Museum in Boston, her face lifting lightly to get a better view of the North Cloister lions, bending perhaps to touch their manes, casting her eyes on the garden beyond, never dreaming of the displaced symmetry that would become her own palette, the fire-breathing dragons already beginning their slow and diabolical descent.
trip back there was not weird. It was wearing trifocals. Almost hit my head. I look up to Terry. I don't know where she is. I can't see her face. But, oh,
Now you're looking down at it.
yeah. The beauty of haiku is it's like that, but there tends to be also an ambivalence or a disjunction of some kind, and that part that goes like that is when you suddenly catch what that meaning meant. Autumn leaves, seagull flying, crying. I wanted to read a poem of Terry's from Transplanted, a very nice volume. You can write long extended poetry with lots of words and metaphors and everything else, and of course you can write small little poetry with apparent simplicity, and they both take hard work. I don't hold one over the other, but I chose one of the latter that Terry had written. It's called Poems. Can you hear me all right in the back? Okay. What I always remembered about the dead boy was the day he offered 2 poems folded inside a shell. The way he placed them on my desk, turning on his heel to leave the room. Thank you.
Technical problem. Sorry about that. Sylvia?
I want to say goodbye probably sometime soon, one-on-one. No, I haven't got anything to read. I just want to wish you well. I'm going to miss you terribly.
Terry Ann, I'm also very sad to see you go, but I'm very excited for you, and I know there's wonderful adventures ahead. One of the many wonderful things about my involvement with Tree has been meeting you. So I'd like to read a poem for you by one of my favorite poets. Her name is Louise Gluck. She's an American poet, and her book, The Wild Iris, this book, won the Pulitzer Prize. And it's written in the language of flowers. This poem, called Matins, seemed, when I read it, to evoke, for me, the many sides of you. So let me read. Is this clear? Yeah? Matins. Not the sun merely, but the earth itself shines. White fire leaping from the showy mountains and the flat road, shimmering in early morning. Is this for us only, to induce response, or are you stirred also, helpless to control yourself in earth's presence? I am ashamed at what I thought you were, distant from us, regarding us as an experiment. It is a bitter thing to be the disposable animal, a bitter thing. Dear friend, dear trembling partner, what surprises you most in what you feel? Earth's radiance or your own delight? For me, always a delight is a surprise, and you are that. Thank you.
I've known Terry Ann since 1992, and a muse can be many things, and you can have many muses. If a muse can be simply thought of as something that makes you want to write, it gives you an idea for writing poetry. Well, I think both Terry Ann and I have traded off on each other and furthered each other's in terms of success, in terms of a few each of individual poems published. So I'm going to read something from the Butterfly Dream. It's not a haiku or a tanka. 91. Black swan, a gathered darkness on the lake. Tarnished silver, the feathers once so white. Shimmer visions, veiled to sight. Silver memories, pale awake. Darker still the night, the bird floats unseen. Curved neck across wings, love's ebbing in sleep. Disturbed by sighs, wings unfold, webbing the deep. Water, and light on water, and waking on dreams. Hold still, don't breathe. The swim of ripples will calm itself into the moon. Soon, as the white serpent neck of a crescent swan, become your psyche, completing the circle of the god's sleep. Touch, slumbering, oneness, awake in your arms, perfect stillness. Thank you.
It's a bit weird, but anyways. I first heard of a person named Terry Ann Carter while I was browsing the dungeon at the book market on Dalhousie Street when the book market was open, and found her book transplanted there. Not a bad read for $3, I thought. The second time I encountered a woman by the name of Terry Ann Carter was during the 2007 Haiku Canada weekend. It was strange because she's moving her hands, moving her arms, doing a zillion gestures, and what got me, she wasn't French-Canadian like me. But little did I know then that I would be volunteered into the executive of Haiku Canada, and someday I guess she'll tell me to stop calling her the boss. So here we are 5 years later. I've come to know Terry Ann a little more, having translated her latest book of haiku and tanka named Hallelujah, which I hope will be out soon. She's become a good friend who I can talk haiku and grown-up young adults. Well, they think they're grown up anyway. She has 2 sons all over the world, it seems, and whom she adores. And Daryl in the back, I guess he's in the back. There he is there. He's like me. We haven't grown up yet, so I'm with you. So I'm going to read 2 tanka from Hallelujah. The first one's close to home because my dad sort of said the same thing when I was listening to Sabbath and all those great bands. Here's the first one. Although I swore I'd never say it, you call that music at my son's bedroom door. Même si j'ai juré de ne jamais dire, tu appelles ça de la musique, à la porte de la chambre de mon fils. And what seems to be the signature poem for Hallelujah, I'll do the French version first. Seins nus, je te sers un petit déjeuner au lit, espérant que les pamplemousses soient plus larges. Topless, I serve you breakfast in bed, wishing the grapefruit were larger. Thank you.
I'm going to kill you for that.
I didn't didn't turn red yet. I had to wait till it turned red. I met Terry way, way back in the day. Marty Floman pointed her out to me and said, "She's beautiful, isn't she? But she writes about flowers." What I'm going to read, because I mean we have been through a lot of things together, including getting lost, I think, once in Oxford Mills. But this is from Invisible Tea. It's Terry's haiku, and I have another poem after that. Neither of these are mine, I hasten to add. But this is underground parking, no space for the moon. And like this reading, this Invisible Tea, which was from Caddo, was dedicated to the memory of Marianne Bluger. So, okay, this one, because Terry Ann and I both come from New England. We're both Americans. We both come from Massachusetts, which is not pronounced Massachusetts, regardless of what Canadians say. So, and in fact, her mom, who is the world's greatest mom, once said to me, "Well, you come from Brockton, but I'll forgive you." So, this is Robert Frost's poem, "The Road Not Taken," and I thought, considering where she's going, it's very appropriate. It's also one of my favorites, so. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I hope this road makes all the difference.
Terry Ann has been described as a contemporary voice in haiku, a leader in arts education, and an activist committed to bettering the life of people in Cambodia. How true are these words? I have known Terry Ann for many years. I believe I first met her through the late Marianne Bluger, another Ottawa poet, who had a fierce worldview that echoed through her work. It has been a pleasure to watch Terry Ann's poetic voice grow in confidence and strength. Her voice is an all-encompassing one that embraces the imagistic simplicity and resonance and the beauty of the haiku and the tanka, and the need to speak out about the complexity of one's life, as in her marvelous and moving elegiac book, A Crazy Man Thinks He's Ernest Hemingway. When Terry Ann contacted me to read the manuscript of the book she is launching tonight, Day Moon Rising, I was very complimented. In this book, I saw a maturity that wedded her poetic and her activist voices. This work draws not only on her compassion and sense of wonder, but on the hopes and struggles of everyday Cambodians to survive. It does not do so pedantically, but with beautifully astonishing images and words. She takes us into the heart of the people she has worked closely with over the years, and into her own heart as it is revealed to her by the people she is working among. I only learned recently that Terry Ann was relocating to Victoria. Her presence in Ottawa will certainly be missed. As the Ontario rep for the League of Canadian Poets, she has programmed a number of poetry events in Ottawa. She has participated in poetry groups in the city and has brought her eye for concise imagery and deft turn of phrase to improve many poets' early drafts. But tonight we are here to celebrate her latest publication, so let us, while we can, savor and enjoy the fragrance of her words that will linger in this room later this evening. Lucky for us, even though she will be at the farthest reach of our country, her voice remains among us through her books, which infuse our poetic world. And I've decided I'm going to read one of her poems, from A Crazy Man Thinks He's Ernest in Paris. One of the things that Terry and I shared is I worked in international development, and a lot of my travels overseas is reflected in many of my poems. But another thing that we share is she came up to a schoolhouse my partner and I have in the Ottawa Valley, and she brought some things from her mother, who had passed away recently, because the schoolhouse tends to be sort of a museum, archival, sort of holding for practically anything. And also, too, because my own mother is now 99, still living alone in a family home. She's amazing, but it's a very odd process to watch your parents slowly being erased away. So I've chosen to read Ladies of My Mother's Generation. I see them everywhere, in twos or alone, meeting at the Chateau Laurier for lunch, these ward brides waiting for ships to sail, or riding the Chattanooga choo-choo, the A train waiting for sons or daughters to pick them up from strawberry socials in the church basement, weekly appointments at their hair salons. Stories from the ladies of my mother's generation who designed quilts the size of a hand towel, covering the bodies of dead babies, their eyes holding tight to a crucifix, histories meshed with pressing of pants, the correct brooch on the lapel of a favorite jacket, sometimes the makeup a little too thick, lipstick smeared at the corner, what they don't say, the clack of knitting needles before arthritis marking time, my mother's silence around her son's disappearance, never a nod, a wink, a flash of evidence as though he never existed, his letters regulated to a Tupperware container stored in the back of her shoe closet. Thank you.
Congratulations on publishing another haiku book, Terry-san. I met Terry-san at the haiku meeting at the Embassy of Japan almost 10 years ago. 10 years sound long, but for me it feels like a very short time. I don't make any haiku myself, but I have learned a lot about English haiku through Terry-san. And she is a haiku enthusiast. I think that she is the best haiku author in the world. Her haiku is beautiful and understandable for me. I consider myself fortunate to have met such a special person. I am reading some spring hike in this occasion. Spring rain leaking through the roof, dripping from the wasp's nest. Understand? Okay. Another one, spring air, woven moon, and plum scent. Those two are composed by Basho. And then another one I found this morning on Japanese newspaper. Beautiful spring. The 7 days of the 7 days of the week start again. This is Seishi Yamaguchi. Thank you.
A technical problem. What the hell am I going to say after that? Nothing, in fact. That's what I'm going to say. I think you can tell from the readers tonight that you're a very loved woman.
You just changed your mind, right? I can't go now.
You've given so much to the world of poetry and to the world, period, that we owe you. Thank you so much, Terry. Please.
Okay. The next time I leave, I'm hoping that somebody tells me ahead of time so that I can have 9 drinks to get myself ready. What a wonderful, wonderful tribute. I had no idea this was happening. I was just so thrilled to be reading with Catherine Owen. I was going around all day. Wow. Thank you all. You know, it's a wonderful poetry community that we share here in Ottawa, and we've all been part of it. We see each other and we cheer each other on, and even when we have great, vast differences of opinion, it doesn't matter. We still cheer and we're still there. And from what I understand, I think we're one of the only cities that just has that glue that keeps us. So thank you all for this. This reading tonight is dedicated to Marianne Blucher. It was through Marianne that I fell in love with the Tabitha Foundation, that I fell in love with Jan Ritzkes. Marianne also led me to the literary world of Japanese forms. She was a great mentor and a friend. She passed away in 2005. She is still very missed. The reading is also dedicated to Daryl, Dylan, and Barrett Carter, my compas's home. Wild Lotus, after Mary Oliver. You do not have to be vigilant. You do not have to be aware of every little sign. You do not have to record the millions buried. It is an insurmountable task. You can't set down the facts. You can't go ghost hunting in the fields of minds. You can't even say you have a stake in this harvest. Whoever you are, know that the wild lotus that blooms in the filth of ponds is pure. At this moment, incense smoke drifts, spins, unravels in the air, scented with sandalwood, sliced ginger. Lobby of the Golden Gate Hotel, number 8, Street 278, Phnom Penh. Beneath a basho leaf, 100 spiders move slowly on their threads. Grenade parts, AK-47s, photocopied girly mags in the Russian market, stacks of silk, prostheses. Turning midair, a flock of starlings. Under a yellow umbrella, 2 monks glide off the curb, stop to light incense at the Spirit House on the corner between the gas station and the foreign bookstore, a small ceremony of remembrance. At this moment, my mind swings like a Nikon 84. When I say here, I mean the ringing of a Buddhist bell, light opening a red camellia. Bones of children buried in killing fields. Day moon rising. What a spirit house wants. A spirit house wants to be called by its proper name. San Fra Phum wants to celebrate the dead. A spirit house wants to be blessed by a holy man in consultation with its owner. A spirit house wants the offerings of families, bananas, coconuts, mango, set on tiny steps, to be an invitation for the closed palms of prayer. Close to orchids, basho leaves, a spirit house wants to remind the world of day and night ceremonies, small remembrances, curl of incense smoke unraveling into sky. The first part of Day Moon Rising is dedicated to a woman by the name of Somali Mom. Somali Mom is probably one of the most courageous women that I've ever known. She was sold into sexual slavery by her own grandfather at 16. She's written about her life in the brothels in Phnom Penh. She escaped, and today, at great risk to her own life, she has vowed to close these brothels down, one by one by one. And she rescues children as young as 8 years old. She reintegrates them into society. She is an amazing woman. She has started a foundation to help her with this work. Much like absence, much like missing. Because a tuk-tuk driver has gone to get her, a child may enter this shelter at any moment, bleeding black, blue. Because she is addicted to drugs and could be sold for mere dollars, because she has been burned, because she may have dysentery, AIDS, TB, because she is 8 years old, because if she dies, she wants to die here. For the tuk-tuk drivers, after Edward Hirsch. Tonight, I want to speak about the tuk-tuk drivers who have so much faith in their navigation, who know these roads like a crab knows sand. Three-wheeled taxi, auto rickshaw, the canvas roof and drop-down sides, convenient in rainy seasons. I love the way they are willing to go off the path, find the gravel roadway to a family temple just out of town. Always they know the best restaurants, can recommend fried beef with green mango, spicy duck salad, fish amok in baby coconut shells. Still, in communist style, we pass a poster celebrating the 10th anniversary of Khmer Rouge's demise. Evil, my driver says. My father buried in killing fields. I love the tuk-tuk driver who carries a Stop Sex Trades in Southeast Asia sign. I trust he will wait for me, carry me home. The history of Cambodia is a dark and heavy one. The Khmer Rouge entered Phnom Penh April 17, 1975. They were there for 4 years. This is a poem trying to capture that day. Photograph Phnom Penh, April 17, 1975. Your eye notices the rock faces of young Khmer Rouge soldiers marching wide boulevards, skulls wrapped in krama headscarves, ammunition brazen against chests. Something unspoken, unfamiliar, something pouts like a prostitute. In the upper hand corner, a young woman raises her arms. On another day, she might gather lotus from the ponds outside the city, carry stalks to street corners to sell. Today, she whispers, freedom. 5 years of civil war come to an end. Sunlight spills over trees, floods the city center. This is where the revolution will begin. Teachers, tailors, civil servants, monks, you can almost see them hiding. You know what history has in store. This photograph has a title, Year Zero, negative space. I would like to read some haiku in honor of Mr. Toshi Yanahara, who is here this evening, and all of my haiku friends and all of my poetry friends. Temple doorway, all our shoes in one pile. Pond in first light, the low hum of bees. White orchid, in its center, my center. Hibiscus blossoms, girls paint their nails for the tourists. The middle section of the book is dedicated to Jan Riskus, who is the founder of the Tabitha Foundation. The first poem is for Kate Braid. Any of you who know her book, Turn Left at the Ladies, where she speaks about being the only woman on a construction crew, is one of the most wonderful books of poetry I think I've ever read. And I went over to Cambodia not having any of these skills, and so when I came back I thought I really had to dedicate this poem to her. Unaccustomed as I am, for Kate Braid. I do not know the power of weight, the ease to drive nails. I have not found my rhythm on the hollow bamboo floor. I do not know the coal-powered steel, the hickory grain, titanium T-bone, curved, long, straight, rip claw, curved claw, drywall, sledge, the setting hammer, raising hammer, finish, framing. I have not studied the carpenter's course. I do not mix cement. Yet in Prey Vang jungles, Western Cambodia, I am part of a house-building team. Will bandage wrists and thumbs to haul stilts, bend tin to wrap around walls. My handsome Estwing, forged from metal, leather-wrapped, clangs by midday, echoes in air filled with dragonflies, scent of white orchid. I am trying to keep sweat out of my eyes, my mind off water break. Sometimes when you travel in a foreign country, you have the wonderful pleasure of discovering new foods. I had never, ever tasted or seen a dragon fruit before. I understand you can actually buy them down here in the Asian market on Somerset Street, but I didn't know that. And a dragon fruit looks a little bit like a pear, and it has these little kind of winged-like things that come off of it that actually make it look like a dragon. It's a wonderful looking thing. You open it up, it's pink, and it has these black seeds, and they splash out all over you. It's a thrilling thing. Dragon fruit. To tell if a dragon fruit is ripe, place your hands over the black barbed fins, press into the center. If it is soft, the pink flesh will drip into your palms, an ointment to cure the broken heart on your sleeve. Black seeds scatter like rain. You could write a children's book about the history of dragon fruit, illustrate it with short line drawings in ink. Create characters in a morality play, the bad guy with the longest nose. Like ancient Khmers before you, before Buddha, before Shiva, who worship spirits alive in the veins of leaves, roadside dust, you could fall on your knees, pray to dragon fruit. You could gather them off the buffet table in the restaurant of the Golden Gate Hotel, carry them to your room on the 6th floor to place on the shelf above the porcelain sink, a feast for the tiny red ants that keep pestering you for food. You could block the leaky air con, compose a blues riff on your Hohner harmonica, slide yourself silly. I'd like to finish with 2 poems. One is a fantasy, and the second, the final poem, is the reason I wrote the book. Lacquered red. It comes from a quote by a poet by the name of John Brandy, a good friend who lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I want to live a life of lacquered red. Outcry from some lonely bird I cannot name, the sky as Sisley would have painted it, prepared to pour. The heart is a frog, ready to splash into pond water. The afternoon unbends like lily pads floating on long, flimsy stems. Old stones seem to be weeping. I am nose to nose with dripping bachot leaves, their scent like crystals in a darkened cave. How can I explain this longing for crimson, the brick red roofs of Spanish houses, rouged lips of orchids? Just below the surface of my eyes, I search for hibiscus-colored birds, for russet sunsets, radish flavor in every plant I eat. For the Queen of Hearts, rose pink shrimp on silver trays, the swirl of a ruby skirt. In a Rothko painting, I want to be the vermilion streak. Below this Cambodian courtyard, I conjure a man who presses his palm into the small of my back, his left leg against my thigh. In tempo with temple bells, we tango into the lacquered red. Clear light. And again, I want to thank you all for this evening. A dragonfly hovers over the small cistern of water. It waits for a chance to land. The courtyard patio overlooks a crowded road, sleepy in this afternoon's haze. The dragonfly, luminous, catches each ray, deciphers it within its body. How like this insect I want to be, taking light to the darkened edges of the world. Let things shine. Namaste.